Here we go, TJ saying hello. 3, 2, 1.
Cheers.
Alright, wait for me to come out, then it's all yours. Love this bit, this pause bit.
Yeah, we've got a little double door. No. There it is. All right. Welcome to the Academy Football Network podcast with myself, Big Nath and Big C. Today we have for me, a very, very special guest. I think Cardinal will definitely agree with me, our most distinguished guest. And I'd probably class Richard as a true ambassador and hero to Academy football and the development of people, players, coaches, alike. Carl?
Yeah, obviously I'm always going to agree with those great intros. But for me, it's a guest that a lot of people will want to hear an insight to, because I think generally we've had people, footballers, ex-footballers, people within a game in a certain degree, but I just think talent ID now and recruiting of players has become massive. So, thanks for coming.
Welcome, Richard.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. Thank you.
So, Rich, what we started to do is we started to warm our guests up with a couple of quick fire questions, just to kind of ease the mood and just get us talking a bit. So, what we're going to do, I'm going to ask you some quick fire questions. Very simple. First one, here we go. Favorite position to hold, either in talent ID or academy management?
That's a really good question. I think I like the academy manager role because it's kind of a broader role. And actually the role I'm in now really is director of football at the university, because it's lots of variety. I love talent ID, I'm really passionate about it. But, this week I've taken a team, I've coached a team, I've done some stuff around kind of commercial activities, I've done some talent ID stuff. So it's kind of a broader range. So I do like that and that kind of variety.
Cool. 3 things an academy player should have when entering into the academy environment.
Wow, that's a good question. I think that kind of you're looking for enthusiasm. You want somebody that wants to come in and give it a good go. Yeah. And I think it's up to you to create an environment when that can kind of come about. I think then there needs to be kind of an openness to learning and a desire to want to learn. And a commitment, understanding that they're going to need to put some effort into it, because it's hard. Yeah,
I think that's really quite interesting actually, because I know it's supposed to be a quick fire, I'm not delve into it now, but all those things had nothing to do with technical or tactical. Interesting. What is the first thing you look for when you watch a player?
I guess there are some technical qualities that you are. So when I was at Tottenham, we talked very much about wow moments. Something that you literally go, wow. And it doesn't have to be a fantastic piece of skill, although I'm probably biased towards that kind of player. I have to accept that. But it could be a tackle. It could be a fantastic save or a shot. So there's a variety of different things. But so for me, I want somebody to stand out from the crowd.
Cool. 2 characteristics an academy staff member should have.
Patience. And again, a real desire to be, I guess, the advocate for the player, somebody that wants to get to know them, wants to work with them. One of my kind of bugbears is when you get coaches who say, well, they can't do this, they can't do that. Well, listen, if they could, they'd probably be in the first team, they wouldn't be coming to you. So you need to be able to work with them. So that kind of desire to want to make people better.
And finally, your biggest achievement in football?
I've been really lucky. So to have worked at big clubs and at international level, to see teams go through and win World Cups when I was with England was fantastic. But I guess for me it's individual journeys. Yeah. So when a player that you've known for a long time makes his debut or does something. So just talking about earlier, there's a boy that's just gone to Lincoln, TJ Ayoma, who actually came from the club that I used to run when I lived in Hackney and worked in Hackney. Yeah. He was a boy from that club. To see him playing in the England national team and captaining that team, even though it was a youth team, and then seeing him on the bench for the first team, hoping he's going to come on, and when you get those players who actually do make a debut and do go forward, I suppose for me that's the pinnacle of what you want to try and do as a developer or as a talent ID person.
Yeah, that's like a proper podcast in itself.
That is nice. That is nice, definitely.
I think when we spoke to Carlin and when we kind of first approached him and said we want to get Richard on the show, we really want to kind of step away from not so much your actual, what's the word, experiences in terms of like playing and all that kind of stuff. We really want to kind of learn about culture, environment, what else? We've talked about
philosophy, profiling of players,
Yeah.
developing the individual, all those sorts of things that sort of talent ID now is kind of a holistic approach around recruiting players, and we wanted to kind of develop that sort of understanding. Your background, so how did it start? Where was you first? Hackney?
Yeah, so I think people always look at you and go, it's great, you've got these jobs, and don't realise some of the stuff that you have to do. It's a bit like serving your time, isn't it? Do the hard yards. So I started off as a youth worker in Hackney.
Wow.
20 years. Ran a club in just on the borders of Hackney and Islington. Multi-sport club. Quite a remarkable place. And if I look at, and you asked me the question, the kind of highlights of my career, I guess probably those 20 years I did there were some of the best things that I've ever done. We ran a big football programme there that was kind of the forerunners to the academy system. We actually got some technical support from the FA. So it's a strange organisation which is relatively small, but had lots of people that were kind of backing it and pushing it, and for us to get into the FA and get them to give some help towards doing a programme. And it all kind of came around at the right kind of time. But that programme in itself developed some fantastic people. So we're talking a little bit about two coaches now that are at Reading, Michael Donaldson and Mehmet Ali, that came through the programme.
Yeah, I did my B with Michael.
So Michael, he was a little winger, or quick winger, that played in the team that we ran and went through the programme, went to college in the morning, came with us in the afternoon. Rob Nichol, who now works at the Premier League as part of their audit team around education. I had to fight tooth and nail to get him into sitting in Islington College because he didn't have 5 A's to C's. And now, having gone off, got his degree, became a teacher, got involved in youth work, went into a club, and now he's in a really high position. So for me, as much as I've been fortunate to work with some top players, the success stories of Michael, Mehmet, Rob, and a variety of other people. The programme we run, Matthew Joseph, who works for the FA, played at Leighton Orient and Cambridge. He was at Orient and he used to come down and do coaching because I'd coached his brothers, and he said, one day I'm going to give up, I'm going to retire and I need something to do. So the club kind of touched loads of different people. So that was my kind of experience. And I was did my badges, got asked by the FA because I was kind of independent to do a bit of scouting for them, got involved in coach education. I got a funny job where every international team that came across to play against England, they asked me to be like the team liaison officer. And lots of people say to me, why would you do that? You're just running around after people. But for me, it meant that I was with the Spanish national team, watching them train every day, picking their brains, copying their sessions, taking it back. And I remember Michael saying to me once, Rich, we've done this when we were doing something at Tottenham. I said, no, it wasn't me. It was because I copied it off Iñaki Saiz, who's the best Spanish coach of all time, and was that's why Spain's been so successful. And then the Dutch would come over, and the Dutch coach would say, Rich, we haven't got many people. Do you want to help with the coaching sessions? Wow. So now I'm with Wesley Sneijder feeding balls into him. So people said to me, you're mad, why do you want to do it? But it was the best learning experience. So I used to go out everywhere and try and do everything with a dream that I wanted to get into the professional game at some stage, I suppose. And 20 years in, suddenly the opportunity came at Tottenham. So really fortunate, but that kind of grounding and earning the right.
It's a great grounding, and listening to some of the guys. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to cross paths with some of the guys that you're talking about, and they are quite grounded as well. They're quite grounded people, which is nice. So I'm sure some of what you did in that 20 years in terms of that youth work, you probably act in some way indirectly or directly as a mentor to them, which is interesting.
And I think you get to come from a different perspective. So going into football, professional football, which is it's elite, it's hard, it's business, it's all those things. Kind of my background always lent itself to thinking about young people and how you do the best by them, and you try to help them, and you try to give them opportunities. And that can be quite difficult in that really harsh environment that you sometimes come to within in a football club. But I try to kind of carry that on in the way that I operated.
What kind of young person was coming to you in Hoxton? What was their kind of makeup?
Oh, well, it's a challenging area. I could tell you some horrendous stories of, some of the things that the guys had were going through in terms of family background, And people used to say to me, "Oh, are you working with children at risk?" They're all at risk because of the environment they live in, and it's a different area now. I was there last night, and they have different problems around kind of the gang culture and all these kind of things. So you had a variety of different people going through there, but we used to charge 20p for subs, because that's what, and we didn't want to put out. It was a massive battle. Does it go to 25 or 30? We didn't want to exclude anybody. We wanted to keep everybody having that kind of safe haven to go in there. But more than just that, in terms of how you develop young people. So, it was tough, and they came from some challenging backgrounds, and we had some real moments. But it was some of the best things in my life. And
is it still running? Is it
still there. Yeah, I was there last night. I sit on their kind of management committee.
Board,
so I still go in and do a little bit. So I was there last night at one of their committee meetings, and they got different challenges, different problems, but you're still talking about the same kind of things. Still talking about the program. How do you engage with young people? What kind of things young people want these days? They do a lot of work in terms of education. So not only they've got physical activities going on, they've got a Spanish class. They've got to try again in supporting those young people and
developing them as well.
Yeah.
Sure.
Another one. I'm trying to say this maybe the best PC way. So when I've spoken to coaches before, and I've been Watford, I've been at Palace, and maybe talking to some coaches that do not come from the same demographic background as some of the boys that they coach, they often say to me, "Oh, Nathan, it's you deal with them, or it's easy for you because you understand." How did you engage those young people?
It was interesting because when I first went there, it was pretty much an all-white club. Hoxton, that area, is quite renowned for National Front and all these kind of horrendous things. But the area was starting to change, and I remember when I first went there, we employed 3 different people through a program, all 3 who were black. And suddenly you have parents coming in going, okay, there's other people in here, and maybe I can trust them with my child rather than just kind of... So I recognised early on that I couldn't be everything to everybody, and that you do need to have some other people coming in and working with you, and you need to broaden the spectrum of the people that work there to make sure that people were comfortable. And over time, people get to know you anyway. So I felt quite comfortable in my area. I remember one of my first days at Tottenham, and John McDermott and I went to meet Classford at Broadwater Farm, and I must admit, even there, no. And we pulled up in a Vauxhall Vectra, and I said to him as I sat there thinking, we just look like police. And I'm shrewd enough to understand the areas that I'm in, thinking this is not going to go well. I can't, and it was fine. Classford was fine, so he looked after us. But I recognised that there's some communities that perhaps you're not going to be able to work with. So over time, we built up a program working with Polish young people and football. So I was thinking, right, I want to get scouts that can work in that community because it'd be difficult. 1, there might be some language barriers. 2, culturally, I'm not going to understand fully, and they're not necessarily going to trust me. So therefore, I need to make sure there are other people that are going to help me do that. So I'm not trying to say that it's not my responsibility, I'm not going to get involved. And clearly, the place I worked with, that couldn't be the case. I had to immerse myself in a club that was forever changing, and the makeup of the club was changing, and a lot of emerging communities are coming to those kind of areas. So it was constant change. And I felt very comfortable in that environment. So it wasn't really a big deal for me to go to Tottenham, which actually was very much like the club that I ran when I first went there. Tottenham, based in Chigwell, there was, it wasn't very. I remember the first academy photograph, and there was literally a group of boys that are all pretty much all white. And because it came from the leafy suburbs of Essex, and that's where they all came from. And through staff recruitment, and the main reason they asked me to go there was because I knew London. I knew inside the North Circular. We weren't scouting inside the North Circular. We weren't going into Haringey. We weren't going into Hackney. And they were kind of my areas. I knew Market Road. I knew all the places to go. I knew the people. I knew all the leagues. And so suddenly you're changing the whole thing. And that had its challenges, challenges for the coaches who suddenly were dealing with different types of kids. Kids that weren't always going to be on time, and they couldn't understand that the challenge of a young person coming from Hackney was different from somebody that was getting in with their mum and dad on a Range Rover coming down from...
I think that's a great example, and we often think about that, and we look at, I think, when you look at an evolving environment, and we was going to go into your time at Tottenham and what that looked like for you, and but I think that's a great point in regards to understanding the different type of child and what they're going through to come to a 5 o'clock meet in terms of school and parenting support and all the things that we probably don't initially think about, and the environment's got better in thinking about it, to be honest. You got transport support and things like that, but I think that's a great point in regards to understanding that player is doing a totally different journey than another player on a basic level. Yeah,
and often, you know, their commitment was questioned. You know, they're always late, what's going on? And then when you explain that this child probably left school in Hackney at a certain time, probably had to go and pick up a sibling, take them home for their tea, then get on a bus, a train. And when we were at Chigwell, you know, it wasn't the easiest place to get to. Then walk down Luxborough Lane, and they're 5 minutes late. Flipping it, well done. I mean, you've got to be don't be criticising them, be giving them credit that they've done all of that and got there and almost made it on time. So don't question their commitment, because their commitment is probably more than. And I'm not saying that's, you know, the child that gets supported and gets there. That's great and fantastic. As you say, there are different challenges, and I think trying to get the coaches and everybody else to kind of see that was at the beginning a little bit of a challenge.
So you're at Tottenham now, and you realise that maybe a need to change some of the players that are coming in, and probably purely from an ability point of view. How do you actually go about doing that? What's your first steps? You're in the door and you say, okay, I want to put my stamp on it. How do you go about it?
Well, I think it's about the scouts you've got, the areas that you're looking at. So clearly, if you're doing the same old thing, and you're looking at the same school football in the same areas, you're going to get the same results. So how do we broaden that out? So with my kind of knowledge, I was thinking, well, you know, where are some of the key recruitment areas? Where would I go? Where would I go if I was looking for players? And that was probably a little bit more central, you know. So there were some prime spots where I thought, you know, we're not represented. And when I'd speak to other people that I knew at other clubs, I'd go, no, we don't see Tottenham scouts here. They're not here. You know, they're not at Market Road watching a midweek football. Arsenal are there, yeah, of course they are. Yeah, absolutely, all over it. Chelsea are there, West Ham are there. I think when I first got to Tottenham, we were getting the kind of 4th or 5th pick. You know, it was best one was going to Arsenal, maybe Chelsea. Then it was kind of West Ham, and then we were battling with Fulham, Charlton, and everybody else. You know, and we're Tottenham. You know, so it was saying, are we looking in the right areas? Have we got the right people? I think one of the first things that we tried to do was clearly set out what our kind of principles were based on a philosophy. So I think that's really key for any club to have a very clear kind of direction of travel. What's your philosophy? What are your values? And we did. I remember having, probably 6 months in, a big conference for coaches and scouts to say, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, this is what the academy manager is saying, this is what the first team coach is saying, this is what, you know, Chris Ramsey would have come in by, and what's Chris saying? Perry Suckling, this is what goalkeepers should look like. Make sure everybody's really, really clear about the types of players that we want to go for. And then you get the right people. I'm convinced in most situations it's not necessarily about the club per se, it's about the individual. So if you've got good scouts who get it, understand it, but also have the ability to build relationships, parents sign their children to that individual where they have a rapport with, a relationship with. And I know that's true because I've done it where I've said to a scout, listen, come and work for us. I know you're at West Ham. And guess what? All the under-8s that he had come over with him. So he's probably been telling them for months, they're rubbish. And then within a moment, they've all just said, yeah, okay, we're going to come. We're not going to go to that club. We're going to come to your club. So that tells me that there's a bit more than just the club. It's about that individual. So for me, it was getting the right people, getting them on the same page, and just understanding where we should be going to do our recruitment and being organised and having the processes in place. I
think I'm just listening to the philosophy thing, and because I'm interested in philosophies of clubs and identifying with a club, a type of player, and how clubs go about that, because players outside of academy football, they always seem to think it's all the same, and generally speaking it isn't. And I always think the clubs that have a better philosophy in the player profiling, they seem to be successful. Now, you might not be a player for that environment because you don't fit the profile. You might be successful somewhere else. But then you have a clear support, understanding, and recruitment, I think, becomes quite easy because you go, yes, that player's good, but they're not for us. They're not our type of player. So how do you stay loyal to that? Because that can be difficult, I always think.
Yeah, it is. And I think we were very clear when we first started. So when I went to Tottenham, there was quite a small group of people within kind of a year of. I was first in. So, I mean, John McDermott, who runs the academy, I would consider to be one of the best developers of players. I think he's exceptional. Very clear about what he thinks is required. Tries not to deviate from the plan. I mean, you're right. That's really
key.
hard.
I think that's the key. Deviating from the plan.
So you need to be very clear about the way that you feel that the best way, and you need to. So it was me, John McDermott, Chris Ramsey came quite quickly. End of the first year, Alex Inglethorpe came in, who's now at Liverpool. Perry Suckling was obviously already there. So we were a pretty tight group of people that we had a real clear idea about this is what we're going to and this is how we're going to do it. It's always difficult within the club. I think some clubs are better than others in terms of how you connect it up to the first team. Sometimes that first team can be a bit of a bubble. There is a kind of a DNA of a Tottenham player. You know how Tottenham kind of want to play as a club, but that does change at the top level, and you've got to understand that's got to do it. But the academy should be a fairly, I think, a permanent thing that doesn't ebb and flow too much. These are our basic principles. These are the types of things that we're going to do. These are our beliefs, and they might be. You're right. They're different from what other clubs do. So I remember being at Arsenal. So you all know Tunde Adeshokan. You know Tunde? So Tunde, I remember standing there with a group of under-8s, and I'm with Tottenham, and he's with Arsenal, and I'm saying, take him on, and he's saying, pass it.
Yes.
He's looking at me going, what are you doing?
Absolutely, what you always hear about the two clubs, different in that.
But that's absolutely fine. I haven't got any problem with that. And I remember him looking at me, and I go, it's right, Tunde, you do what you do, and we'll do what we do. And it's just different because we believed that that's the best way of doing it. We wanted, at the foundation phase, messy games that replicated the schoolyard, weren't very pleasing to the end. We didn't want it to look like the first team. Yeah. And in fact, you sit there going, no. I remember John going around, no, I don't want this. And it looked lovely, perfect, pom. You go, no, I don't want that. I want it to be people getting on the ball, running with it, taking people on. We can do the other bits. We can teach them to understand where there's an overload, it's 2v1, and we can. And Arsenal chose to do it a different way, and Arsenal have been hugely successful. So I'm not critical. I think you just decide on the way you're going to do it, and then you stick to your plan. And that's, I think, has always been the way for Tottenham at that time to produce really highly technical players, and that was our big thing: technical. It meant, for a point, we didn't ever have any centre halves, which was a problem. So then you do have to think, okay, well, what are we doing? How do we then make sure that if we're going for highly technical players, how do we support those players? What other kind of players do you need to have around them? Because, we would go out and get battered every single week, and at some point confidence drops and then they can't do it. So you have got to mix it up a little bit. And there was the thought I heard parents, my son tackles people and can kick the ball longer. He's never going to get into Tottenham. Okay, I can see why you might think that. And sometimes you have to go, well, actually, those attributes are still worthwhile, but we still believe that they've got to be able to, run with the ball, have keep a real
ball under pressure.
Exactly. So those are kind of, for us, were non-negotiables. And then the other things, of course, they're really useful to have.
Do you ever? Was there ever any debate at us? Because you got your principles. Everyone's quite clear in regards to. You're saying this is a Tottenham player.
Yeah.
Was there any sort of special players that you were like, he doesn't fall in our sort of,
but he's a good
but
player.
We have to keep him.
Yeah, I mean, no, yeah. I mean, that kind of player probably fitted into our mould a little bit more because they tend to be the more highly technical, the ones maverick types. I guess the ones which would have had more debate was signing Japhet Tanganga.
Yeah.
So Jaff didn't necessarily fit that, and I remember signing when he went to. We rarely took trialists when we played against Arsenal because we always thought they were going to nick him. So we man-marked his mum, and he played, and we were kind of. I don't know. We used to get knocked over a lot, and used to be a lot of tears, and we felt like Arsenal steamrolled us, and Japhet just went through about 3 different people and left without not in any kind of sense of wanting to do it on purpose, but just the way he was. Strong, went through, and he left this trail of bodies behind him, and I went, sign him, come on, let's get him in. And he probably didn't necessarily fit everything
Wasn't
that we
as
thought.
Cleaner as
no, and I remember some people saying, "Well, we're only getting him in because he's big and strong," and I was let's give him time. I think he can be at the level. And obviously shown that he's done really well to get into the first team. So I think there are always times like that where you're thinking, do we believe this player is going to go, into the first team? But we'd have done it with Harry Kane. Harry Kane came in having been released at Arsenal, and he didn't fit the profile.
Yeah.
Physically, he didn't look like one of our players that time. He's very young. He's July born. Didn't necessarily, if you looked at him and looked at the other types of players we were getting in, Harry didn't really fit the profile.
What would have been lacking?
Physical shape was different from the others. So he's a late developer, I guess. Was 30% down on all his kind of speed, agility, jump tests. And listen, if you're making decisions based on those kind of tests, it's flawed anyway. Pre-puberty, you're not going to do it. But we tested like everybody does. But he was a long way short physically of being to the level that we thought. And he's not a silky skills, running with the ball, taking people on. But what he could do was he could finish. Go figure. So he could hit a ball really cleanly. And he had a real desire to want to learn and get better and practice, and he still does, about, striking out however many balls before he leaves and scoring goals. And we were doing a project on relative age effect, so we probably gave him the benefit of the doubt because he was born in July.
Yeah.
So it worked in his favour in that time, because we might not have taken him. There was a question mark.
I mean, that's you're jumping into loads of stuff that we want to talk about, which is great. I think it's great. In regards to relative age effect, do you think? I mean, you're lucky enough to you worked at a national level, and also you visit clubs and hear what coaches are talking about it. Do you think that's something that coaches are taking on more, or you still think there's more work to be done around it?
I think it's really complex. It's not easy either. I think there's obviously more people know about it. I think if you look at the stats, they don't really change much. I think there are lots of problems. Wherever you draw a line in the sand, there's always going to be an issue of older ones and younger ones. Yeah. If you're selecting players really, really young, so if you've got an under 6 program, which some clubs might have, that's a huge difference. So therefore, you probably are going to have everybody who's going to be old in the group, because the ones who are younger probably can't even do anything to be in that squad. Yeah. So already some people are dropping away and people are getting more. So therefore, that kind of perpetuates it. I think there's more knowledge about it. I think it's what strategies you put in place to try and overcome it. And obviously you've got the dual thing around relative age effect and the correlation maybe towards kind of the maturation side. It doesn't always fit together, but there are some things. So I guess for us, we did a project not only within the club, but we did it with Enfield, and we did some stuff in schools, and so we tried to really get it on everybody's kind of radar that this is what we're trying to do, and come up with some strategies to overcome it. There is a school of thought that says your younger ones in the group do become your most valuable players, and in fact the older ones end up being disadvantaged, because if you're older and if you're bigger, people might say, he's fine, don't worry about it. Yeah. If you're little and young, people are coming up with all sorts of ideas of what they've got to do with you. What position should he play? Should we drop him down a year group? Do we do this? Do we do that? And they've also had to fight blooming hard to get into the programme in the first place and to stay in the programme. So maybe that builds up that kind of resilience. So often you find if the young one can get into your programme and stay in your programme, if you look across the board, long term, they're the valuables. They're the ones the big money buys, and they end up being the Harry Kanes who are worth whatever they're worth.
Yeah, interesting. Very
interesting. Found out when I was playing football, I'm the first few days of September,
right.
So I was always that
big kid.
Yeah, up until like maybe year 7 of school.
Yeah.
Quickest, strongest, and I could just do what I wanted to do. And then before you find that technically, I probably wasn't as pushed as far as I could. It's more reliant on strength, speed, and
it doesn't matter if you're the oldest one, and it doesn't matter if you are an early maturer. It doesn't fundamentally. You can still be a good player. And I think sometimes we get into our mindset, he's good because he's older, or he's good because he's bigger. You can be good and big, and you can be good and old, and you can be rubbish and young,
which I find interesting at the moment, because it's all. I don't know if it's something that because we want to make sure that we don't go to September first quarter, September to November, they're the big and stronger ones. But I think sometimes, or I think what can be conscious of a coach is that they go, well, he is big and strong, so he's not going to be good later. because he's got the advantages now. And whether or not we disadvantage the big and strong ones because of that, I don't know. Sometimes we go, yeah, he's big and strong, but is he only big and strong? But is that his qualities?
Yeah, and I think if you're watching it and you're kind of understanding about the game, clearly I think you understand that those who just use their physical qualities to dominate the game. So I think that can become quite obvious. It's the subtleties of. So I remember he works at Man City now, Dr. Sam Erif. So he worked at England, he worked at Tottenham as kind of S&C and performance. He used to at that conference I talked about, and just make sure don't forget the early ones either, because Tom Huddleston was always big, but he was always good. You could look to him and go, oh, it's just because he's big. Yeah. But he actually, that wasn't the way that he clearly had those attributes. So he's going to hold people off and be strong, but his technical ability was fantastic. So it wasn't just that. So that's the thing you've got to recognise. If it is only the physicality, probably, especially an early one, they get caught up, and all the research would tell you that. Yeah, they might start off quicker, but the other ones will catch up and become faster. They'll jump higher. They'll probably physically I was big and now everybody's caught me up and gone past me. So you've got to keep on technically developing and all the other areas. So I think it's not easy. It is complex. But I think you just need to understand it and at least have it in your consciousness and in the mix when you're thinking about it. So certainly the discussions that we used to have were very much on those lines. When was he born? Do we know what his maturation data is? Where is he? In terms of his physical development. So I think all of those things need to be put in there. And then we did play players down. We had Tom Carroll and Ryan Mason at Tottenham, and they played. They were playing under 16s. Tom Carroll was playing under 16s football as an under 18 because that was what was right for him. Now, you've got to be careful because that might be physically, psychologically, you're in a different situation. And I thought I've been a genius with various players where I've said, yeah, you play down, you do this, you do that. And then they come through and you go, there you go, I'm so clever. And then you speak to them, they go, God, that was awful. Hated every moment of it. It was only until I moved up to my right age group that I could flourish because, peer pressure, the whole thing around if you're at school and if you're a bit not clever, you get
the stigma.
Everything around it, they found it really, really difficult. Okay, so you can now paint a picture and say to players, well, look what happened to Ryan Mason, Tom Carroll. You can see their journey, so trust in it. But it's still really hard.
There's still a stigma around it. Definitely, even the language around it. When you say you're playing down, you're playing up. Yeah. In regards to you're playing with the younger group, you're playing with the older group. It's just the language also comes across to the young people as I'm playing down. Does that mean I'm demoted?
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you even for those big ones that you move up, because I was always a one, and again, probably in my Tottenham days, when I went to QPR, you get somebody coming, they'd be massive, and you go, no, I can't play in that age group. Move them up an age. Actually, move them up 2 age groups. Yeah. And then the poor kid technically wasn't anywhere close to it, so that struggled. And psychologically, just because you are built, you're a 14-year-old that's built like a 16-year-old, you can actually be like a 12-year-old psychologically. So socially and psychologically, you couldn't do it. So it's really hard. I think it's really difficult.
Interesting. So
go on.
I was just going to talk about player profiling. I was just because I think that kind of links to what you're talking about in regards to is that something that is discussed in regards to recruitment and the makeup of the player. How is that done?
Yeah, I think clubs are probably thinking about that more. I think we start off talking about philosophy. Yeah. So everything drops out of philosophy. So England, it was around the England DNA, which is a nice word for philosophy. And everything drops out of that. So how you coach, what you coach, and the players you recruit. So everything. So if you're saying that you want a certain type of player technically, well, clearly when you go and scout, you're trying to look for players that you feel have either can do it now or have the potential to be able to do it in the future. So it links absolutely. So being really clear on what you expect from a player, and not just technically, tactically. There'll be some physical stuff, but the psychosocial stuff is really, really important. Yeah. What kind of behaviours do you want them to exhibit? What kind of characteristics do you expect them to have? Because as they're younger and you're looking at potential, what are some of the things that can help you point in the right direction? Because it is highly complex. It doesn't, you're very lucky if you get one and go, oh yeah, he's definitely going to make it. I know he's 8 years old. I know he's going to make it because he has. And if I spoke to the most senior coaches in English football and said to them, when we had the national school, what players at that kind of age, 15, would you have said definitely going to make it? They can't name many. They'll say Michael Owen, they'll say Wayne Rooney, probably. They'll say Joe Cole. They're probably the only 3 players that all of them would have gone. Definitely knew they were going to make it. That. Nobody else. So that's only 3 players in the whole of. So
a generation of
exactly.
talent.
So therefore, being really clear about some of the things that you think are important. I tend to believe some of those kind of characteristics, behaviours might help you point you in that right direction. But even then, you might physically get to a point in your late teens, early 20s where you stop growing, but your brain's still going up until 25. So your decision making can get better and better in your early 20s. So therefore, some of these characteristics, and we talk about. I did an exercise at Tottenham not so long ago where we said, well, why did we sign this person? Why didn't we sign this one? What kind of behaviours did they have? And we talked about Gareth Bale, and I said, oh yeah, Gareth Bale, look at him, he's great, magnificent physique now. And he goes, but when he was here, he used to get on the coach and eat a big bar of Galaxy chocolate. He didn't really do the gym as well as he could have done. So he's obviously developed those elite behaviours along the way. So some of these things, like a technical attribute, can you develop them? Can you build on them? So I think, you're right. Whether it's positional, whether it's phase, having really clear profiles linked to the philosophy, then that makes life a lot easier. Otherwise, you're just, it becomes really, really difficult. I think foundation phase, you might be a lot more general because you don't know what position they're going to play. You don't know, there's so many things in there. You don't want to be too prescribed. If you're you see it sometimes, under 9s team looking for a right back, or the under 8s team that's looking for an experienced goalkeeper. But and that's, for us, that was never the case within the foundation phase, and became more serious as they got through the youth development phase.
And then, so if we start to look at actual recruitment of young people, I think a good question came from a good friend here at the college. And also a head teacher. So a head teacher came to an open morning, and she was sitting at the back, and she was really engaged with what we were doing as a club. And then she said, how do you recruit young people here? And it's a question that kind of took everyone a bit aback. And she said, ethically, how does that work? What if more than one club wants a player? Do you convince them? So in terms of ethical recruitment, where or how do you sit with that, or what's it look like to you?
Yeah, and it's really hard because in reality, if you're looking at under 8s that aren't registered with the club, that becomes the most competitive landscape for recruitment ever. Worse than at 16, 17, 18 and into kind of professional ranks, because everybody is still trying to get the same players. I think the point we made earlier, not everybody's looking for the same type. That helps sometimes, but everybody pretty much is, wanting to get the best players. Even though we recognise that most of those won't gravitate all the way through, you want to start off your programme with the best possible strong, and you can build and take away and add and all those sorts of things. So
and at 8, they're probably like a blank canvas. Although they've got some qualities, you can develop them into your philosophy.
Yeah, exactly. So that thing about getting them early. Now we know players will come in and out of along the pathway, but generally it's you want to be strong to start off with. And in some parts of the country, it's absolutely fine. If you're in an area where there's only one club, it's easy, isn't it? London's hard. Where you've got some of the biggest clubs in the world, with great scouting networks and great. When you talk to parents and say, do you want to go to this club? Well, actually, Chelsea's great, Arsenal's great, West Ham's, they're all fantastic. Fulham's great. There's every club we've got, they're not like Duff where you're going to go, don't go there, it's just rubbish. You can't say it. Now, some people might say that. That was definitely not my way. I think with us, all we tried to do was say, look at what we do. This is our philosophy. We're very clear on it. It's not for everybody. And some parents didn't buy into it and said, no, it's not for us. Some parents want to go to teams that are going to win. For example, we weren't that much. Of course we want to win. We're not telling the kids we don't want to win. Winning is important, but there are other kind of bigger issues to kind of we're thinking about future. So you might sometimes set them up to fail where they actually lose, but some parents don't like that. They want to win every single game because they've been used to being in winning teams. So we were very clear. This is our philosophy. This is what we do. Come and have a look. We know you're going to be training elsewhere and doing other things. And and this is what we do. So we did parents' evenings. We spent a lot of time talking to people to say to them, and maybe you call that persuasion. I think it's education about the kind of programs that you're trying to put together. And then my advice to all of them was just make a decision based on where do you think your child's going to be happiest, where they're going to learn the best, and where you feel comfortable in the environment. And if it's not with us, fine, it's fine. I know other clubs do different things. I understand that. We used to always do a presentation around the rules. So I'd get the rule book to everybody and say, these are the things you need to know. I want to be really transparent. This is when you can sign. This is how long we can sign you for. Oh, yeah, but I signed 2 months ago and I've got a 2-year deal here. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. Oh, okay. And you go through a whole range of different things, and then you'd say, but at the end of your first year, of course, you can leave. But it's going to be compensation, and this is what and clubs weren't doing that, and it was almost like, well, I'm saying, look, I want to be really open and honest with you. I don't want to put you in a situation where you're believing that it's something that it's not. John McDermott always used to come in on the signing night and kind of make it really clear how difficult it was, and I used to say, come on, give him a little bit, but he would say, no, I'm not going to. I want it for day one. They need to understand. I don't want to have, I'm not putting the wool over anybody's eyes. I want them to be really clear. So our principle was being open and honest, but also there was an expectation of me and my scouts that we want to be in the game. We want to be competitive. So we need to be. Can we be there first? But can we, as a club, make sure that everybody behaves in the right way? Our scouts behave in the right way. Our development centres are running in the right way. Our community programs, when they come for a trial, we want them to have a good experience. So even if they choose not to come to us. So there's a boy who's just gone on loan today, Tariq Lamptey from. His dad sent me a card and he said, really thank you, Richard. It's been great. We're signing for Chelsea. Cheers, thanks for that. And I still speak to him, and I sent him a message the other day saying, well done, fantastic, because I saw his son make his debut. Who am I to say that he made the wrong decision? I'd love him to come to our club, but I'm not going to fall out over it. And Harry Kane is a great one. He at 8 decided to go somewhere else. We had a good relationship with him and his family. The scout was still there. Yeah, great. So as soon as he got released, he rang us up, and we got him in. So
that's quite key in regards to recruitment and developing relationships. So it's standing out in regards to what you're saying.
But you got to be honest. You don't. We're very clear. Don't promise anything. You can't do that. So don't be saying we're going to play you up, or we're going to give you lots of expenses, or we're going to do this and that. That's not how we're going to work. And if you're going to make a decision based on anything apart from the football bit, that's down to you. We're not going to get involved in that. And even going through the program where you'd get older ones and suddenly they're 16, 17 and there's money around. Yes, we wanted to be in the mix and we wanted to be competitive. But if it just became a Dutch auction and people were just doing it for the money, a lot, not always, but most of the time we'd have said, look, we're out. Make the decision based on football reasons. And then I think we're all a lot happier. Do we always get it right? No. Lots of mistakes along the way. I would like to think from a recruitment perspective, we try to operate in the best way we possibly could. And of course, the nature of elite sport is they're going to be disappointed people. There's nothing you can do apart when somebody gets released or they don't quite make it, because not everybody can, not everybody will. But I think it's just being open and honest at the outset to say, this is really hard. I remember we used to have these nights when I say, just being here, you come in for a trial. We used to do big trialist nights, and we did a parent kind of induction and child. I'm saying, you have got to be really proud. The fact that you're here today getting a trial is more than most children will ever get in their lifetime. Now, not all of you will go through it, and there might be people in this room that will go all the way through and play in the first team or play elsewhere. Fantastic. But just being here tonight is a massive achievement.
Excellent. So then, in regards to you as an individual, from Tottenham, you went to QPR manager, academy manager.
Yeah.
Why the change? What was that like?
I've been at Spurs for 8 years. I think I said at the beginning, I like variety, and I just felt that I had more in me, that I could run a whole program. What I'd learnt with some great people at Tottenham, I just wanted, I thought I could just do a little bit more. So the academy manager job seemed a really good one. London, Queen's Park Rangers, good club, Premier League then. So they asked me if I would be interested to go in, and it was a big decision because Tottenham, I just moved into the new training ground, so I'd gone from Spurs Lodge into the new training ground, had a nice new office.
Yeah, lovely there.
So food was good, everything. Yeah, really nice. And knew everybody, comfortable, you know, just.
Good
But I wanted another challenge, you know, and so the QPR one was a challenge. So I remember my first day. I went from Spurs' new training ground, and it was fantastic. Having kind of graduated through, because Spurs Lodge was okay, but we used to play at Middleton House. It wasn't great, you know. It wasn't always great facilities. On my first day, going into some porter cabins and like trying to park my car and getting mud all over my shoes and like sitting in this thinking, what have I done? What have I done? What have I done? But yeah, so it was a challenge, and it was really hard. It was really tough, because you go from an organisation where you've set everything out, everybody's, you're on it, you've got everybody supporting you, John McDermott supporting you, Chris supporting you, all the different people all the way through the organisation, and suddenly you're going somewhere where you've got some real clear ideas about how you want to do things, but not necessarily all the support systems around you. Resources. And you clearly, you know, you make some changes and some different people come in, then you've got to be careful, because they accuse you of just bringing your mates in, but you want to bring in, and I didn't, by the way, but people always assume you do. You're trying to make sure you're bringing in the right people who are going to go in the direction you want them to go into. You know, I'd have been. People said to me, "Oh, you just want to bring a Tottenham philosophy." Well, I would have found it really difficult if I just shifted everything I believed in and tried something else. Yeah. You know, I've got certain beliefs. Why would I be different now? Because I'm in a different club.
And the Tottenham philosophy is built up of your own ideas and thinking and your ideology. So it's you're almost, yes, it is a Tottenham philosophy, but one you built in regards to when you started this. So
and listen, and I thought it was, you know, we showed success, and but perhaps didn't, you know, it was hard to get everybody on board, and some did, and some went by the wayside, and the club was quite, you know, going through some turmoil in terms of promotion, relegation, changes of manager, kind of, you know, it was great. I really enjoyed it, and looking back, I had some of the kind of the best learning experiences. You know, when things are tough, when you look around thinking, oh, actually, it really seems to have disappeared. I'm on my own here, and brought some really good people in. So I brought Alex Carroll over from Tottenham, who we were talking about earlier, who's been fantastic. A good friend of mine, Paul Hall, who's doing the 23s, and Hawley. I remember getting a phone call saying, "Can I come and have a cup of tea?" So I knew his girlfriend, and I said, "Yeah, he can come in. I haven't got any job for him, but yeah, comes." And we had a cup of tea. And then the next week, the under 14 assistant job came in, and this is Paul Hall, who played all over and played the World Cup. Yeah, he was assisting with the under 14s, and he was like just pleased to be there. And I remember the under 14s coach was moaning and groaning. He said to him, "You haven't played the game, and you're the head coach under 14s at a top academy. You just got to be lucky. You know, you're so lucky to be here." Brilliant. And then managed to get Hall involved in other things in full time, and now he's done a great job. And if you look at what we probably started in 2 years, it's come baby steps really. From then, more people coming in. So Chris coming in, I'd left, Perry Suckling came in, a few others, Les Ferdinand, all those kind of people. And you look at them now, you know, they're flying in terms of first teams. It's always difficult, but if you look at young players,
wasn't it, in regards to how many players that they've come through? Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's forced upon you in terms of resources and finances, but it's still, they have to do it.
They've still got to be, and then if they're not good enough, then you get relegated to Division 1. Exactly. So the fact that they've come in and they've maintained it and they're pushing, you know, at least they're pushing up, and they'll players will get sold on and things like that. So I feel like we started that process, and probably, you know, because of Chris and Les, probably a little bit more power to make sure they can drive some things through. So they've done a great job, and so it was pandemonium at some points, but it was great fun. I enjoyed it. Yeah, it was good.
So how do you deal with a member of staff or members of staff that push back and say, and they're not willing, they're not looking to leave. They ain't gonna leave. No. But they're saying, or by their actions, they're not doing what you want to do. How do you deal with that?
And it's hard. We had it at Tottenham. You know, you stand there and talk to people, and they all go, yeah. And you turn your back, and they've gone 4-4-2, knocking it long. You know, and you go, well, just, oh no, I didn't mean that. Yeah, no, we're not playing that way. Or they'd always nod their heads, and then you have to keep an eye on them to make sure. And there comes a point where, you know, you say about change the people or change the people. You may have to get to that situation. I think if I look back critically at what I did at QPR, we were quite in a rush. We had a first ever audit coming up. We didn't have a training ground that was fit for purpose. We had to move training grounds. I managed to push it back, the audit, till the end of the season, and then try to get people up to speed to kind of get to where we need to get to. So we had to do something. We couldn't just keep doing what we were doing, because otherwise we wouldn't have got the Cat 2. So it was, when I tried really hard, but perhaps in another circumstance I'd have done it a little bit slower and try to bring people in a little bit, but whereas actually in reality I had to do it bang, bang, bang. So I probably created a few enemies along the way. I haven't had many enemies in my life, but there are a few people that probably, thought that I'd moved too quickly and changed things too quickly. I just didn't think I had a choice, because I needed to get things moving in time to get audited and go through that process. So I think you do try, you talk to people, you sit down as groups, you go through, you explain, you spend time with them. And there'll be some people that just will never want to budge. And you say, they'll either move along, because that's what they do, or you're going to have to move them along. And although I don't want people to lose their jobs, ultimately you have to work in the best interest of the club. I work for the club, and we had responsibilities to the owners as well as responsibility to the players and doing the right things. So if you felt people weren't really doing it, then you'd have to change them. I didn't have to do many of those. There's a few that left along the way, and then you try and bring in people that are going to follow your philosophy. You do bring in a Paul Hall that is going to be good, and somebody else and somebody else and somebody else, and suddenly you're creating more of those people. And it's like a dressing room, isn't it? You get a dressing room which is full of people that aren't quite doing the things they want to do, and you've got the ones who do want to do it, and you've got floating ones in the middle. And then if you can somehow sort these ones out so they're not there anymore, these ones probably graduate to the good side, and then you've got your team. So I think it's a case of doing a variety of different things like that, and being empathetic and compassionate and understanding, and trying to be to understand where people are coming from and try and help them to change their kind of thoughts or views, and show them some concrete examples of why this can work. We're not,
what's the benefits?
What's the benefits for you as a coach, but also for the players, and ultimately we want to make sure we're getting players through.
That's interesting. Then,
go Talent ID England.
Yes, which is very, very interesting, because it feels like, in terms of the time that you was there, the recruitment of the England teams, there's more England teams, there's loads of players, loads of talent. Was that the plan?
So after 2 years at QPR, for a variety of reasons, which suited me personally as much as professionally, the opportunity to go and work at St George's Park. Now, for me, working for your country, being at that level is the kind of the pinnacle. So, I'm very proud that I was in that role. Hugely challenging, great environment, some really good people, and at a really good time. So actually, England has done well because, yes, St George's Park is there, and that's a great hub. We looked at England DNA and kind of got the philosophy sorted out. We introduced some new things like specialist coaching models and all these kind of things. So everything was great, but fundamentally, two key things. One, really good players in the academies. So the academy system was working, I believe, in terms of producing really, really good young players. So that helps if you've got good players. And one of the things that I was passionate about at the FA was that relationship piece. When we did our best, when we won the World Cup of 17s and 20s, we had really good players, we had a really good setup, but actually all the players we wanted pretty much were available to play. And that was really unusual in internationals because most of them get withdrawn. So, historically...
In terms of the club withdrawals?
Yeah. So they're not always at the right time, so it's difficult. So if you've got an under-20s World Cup that's in the beginning of pre-season, a lot of those under-20s want to be in their first-team environments. Yeah. So the only person who didn't come to that, well, there was a couple, but the main one was Trent Alexander-Arnold, didn't come. And we were like, oh, come on. And he was going, and Alex Inglethorpe, who I know really well, saying, look, he's our great hope for the academy. He's the one. Jurgen wants him to be around training. He wants to take, but they always say that pre-season, they never got enough players, This is our chance, we believe to. And you know what? They were right. They kept him behind. He didn't go. We were gutted. A year later, he's going to the main World Cup because he gets in their first team. And if you're in Liverpool's first team and you're a regular, you're going to be in Gareth's squad. Don't worry about being in anybody else's. You can do that. So I think for him, it was clearly the right thing to do. But when we looked at how many players are normally selected for those teams, I've been at times where the under-20s has been the first 30 players or more, 35 players that you want to select aren't available.
Wow.
So now you're going from pick 35, and you're trying to compete against Brazil and who have got their best players out. Yeah. We get beat and they're going, oh, we're rubbish. Well, not rubbish. We just can't get the players, and so building relationships with the clubs, getting their buy-in and a variety of different things to make sure that they released them was key. And for both the 17s and the 20s, we got pretty much all the players we wanted. And then you can be competitive and you can go and win. So I think it was a good time. And my job very much was to initially start the under-15s programme because we wanted to go a year younger. We'd always traditionally started with Victory
16s.
Shield under-16s.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit about what everybody else is doing 15. So we were not losing, but Wales were nicking players because they were
getting it first.
Yeah, they were getting first, and then it made it harder. Also, we felt that we wanted to give them more development time leading up into championships at 17. We didn't really want them to make their debut on live TV on Victory Shield.
Yeah.
So they looked at the games program as well and said, "Is Victory Shield?" And we upset people and said, we played Victory Shield, Nordics, Montague. Really, we've been doing that for like 20 years. No disrespect to the Nordics or even Victory Shield. Is that the best games program? Look at the Man City's games program. They're going off and playing Barcelona, Real Madrid, Santos, and we're offering them.
Why go to that?
So that's what we're saying. So, and we were saying, well, fair enough. If Tottenham players were going off and playing against some of the best teams in the world, and we're offering them Iceland or we're offering them Wales. No disrespect to Wales, I would say go and play against
go play for your
top
club
10.
team.
So we had to match up. So if they say, we're playing against, we can play Santos. We're playing Brazil. Oh, okay, fair enough. Or, you're playing Barcelona. Yeah, we're playing Spain. So the games program changed, but also this under 15, and we had to do quite a lot of work. And
who was in that first under 15 group, if you can remember?
Well, the first one was the ones that went on the 17. So I remember very clearly sitting there with, I remember seeing Phil Foden on the first day in the indoor. And thinking, flipping heck, he can this ball strike. And also he was one of those kids that, you normally have the Manchester kids and the Liverpool kids and the London kids. He was just playing with the London kids, he just wants to play football. So, that was a really, a talented group, Jadon Sancho and Callum Hudson-Odoi and Jonathan Panzo. And we had quite a few Tottenham boys, Nye Kirby, Tajan Oakley-Booth, TJ was in around it as well, and people like that. So, it was unbelievable team that offensively and defensively. So and interesting, when we were doing the initial trials for those, what we would do is they wouldn't be actually at St George's. They'd have a national one at St George's. Before that, in August, we have 3 camps, and we'd recruit the 3 camps generally on those boys that were born at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year. Okay. And don't forget, international starts in January, not September. So it didn't always work out because guess what? All the programs of the clubs are different, and Man City would say, actually, they can't come to that one; they have to come to this one because we're away. Okay. So although they didn't necessarily sit in the right groups, you knew that you would say, let's say you had 35 players, you had equal amounts from the across the year, so that did help us in terms of our relative age.
And just going back to sort of recruitment, is that something you took from recruitment? Is that something that happens in clubs? I don't know.
For relative age effect, no, I don't think so. The problem you have with clubs is that if you send scouts out to watch grassroots football, they don't know who or where. Yeah. So it is difficult, and they're pre-selected. So they're pre-selected by somebody else. So one of the other things I did at the FA was introduce these education courses, and people said to me, you should only do things that are going to help England national teams win. Okay. Why do you need to do a level 1? Why do you need to do a level 1 for parents? How is that going to help England teams to win? So I would say, but level 1 is designed for parents. So if parents and teachers and grassroots coaches have a basic understanding of talent ID, including relative age effect, including maturation, at least when they're selecting a team, they might have some thought about it. Because scouts from the clubs are going and picking from this pre-selected group. Mm-hmm. So they are, what's in front of them. So I used to get criticised at Tottenham. We'd have a trialist night, and John McDermott used to go around, when were you born? Richard, what the hell's going on? Why do you keep on bringing all these? Fair to the scouts. One, they're only seeing boys, could be of that age group. Now, they should be looking at other, teams and levels and stuff like that, of course. But they don't know what their ages are until they fill form in. So, we used to have this kind of backwards and forwards argument. So that kind of education piece became quite important. So we did try and implement things that then would help, you know, the clubs to kind of implement things as well. But from a national perspective, I guess really kind of fortunate in terms of setting up a network, thinking about how we scouted. You know, we did it very much on a kind of regional basis, but a phase. So you'd have phase experts. So you'd have a youth development phase that was probably doing 15s, 16s, 17s. But in the same area, you'd have somebody that was doing the slightly older ones, right up to then first team level. So my job was there to support all the way through the pathway, predominantly with Gareth and AD, seniors and 21s. At the beginning, obviously Roy was there, and I didn't do as much with Roy. I did little bits and pieces, and Gareth was doing the 21s. But once Gareth was the first team coach, it then meant you had, you know, the whole from top to bottom. And then we introduced, you know, different people to kind of help with the process. And I mean, we had some good few years there, which was
good groups.
Yeah, and
groups.
you are, listen, if you've got good players, I mean, in any football scenario, if your players are really good, the under 20s were excellent, but the 17s were out of this world. Absolutely out of this world.
I've watched them a few times.
Yeah.
And how do you? It's a question for me. If I'm listening to this podcast, how do you manage up? So you're dealing with the national team manager. How do you manage up? How do you maintain that relationship?
Yeah, I mean, the scout coach relationship is quite important. Yeah. I think lots of places struggle with that. You know, it's the kind of us and them. You know, why do you keep on bringing me rubbish players? Or, you know, why do you keep messing players up?
We've heard it.
So yeah, so all those things. So you're going to get that. So trying to get them together is quite important. I suppose at national team level, I had good relationships with national coaches, and that was part of my job to be sitting down with them, talking to them, and ultimately it was their responsibility to pick their teams, you know, and I can only support and advise and help them. So I had a bit more. We had some processes that we put in place in terms of player audits to try and make them take a bit more responsibility about how they were picking players, not going, I fancy you this week and I fancy you next week. I saw you play 2 games, now I'm going to pick you, and actually no, you're not very good, I'm going to pick somebody else. So we had some things that we put in place to try and make them more responsible for, you know, their selection. But ultimately they have to make their own decision. And you know, I was, I guess, working with, at the top end, Gareth and AD are self-sufficient. Gareth's self-sufficient, you know, he knows what he wants. You try to just suggest and have some ideas and be a sounding board sometimes around player selection, the ones. But ultimately, he's probably doesn't need his hand holding. He's very capable of doing what he does. And for me, it was always a softly approach. You know, coming up with some scenarios or some suggestions if things, you know, in certain positions they didn't know. Well, you know, what's the alternative? Who else can we bring in? Have you thought about this person? The audit process meant that they were always selecting from a kind of a group of about 35 players. And that didn't change. You almost waited 6 months, so almost like a little transfer window, and they could only select from this 35. And if they ever wanted to go outside the 35, they had to ask me, which was quite interesting because they didn't, you know, that was quite a different approach for most coaches. They weren't used to having to justify and say to me, Rich, I need to select outside the 35 for a left back. And I'd go, well, why? You've got 2 left back. Oh, he's not very good. Well, tough. You know, you selected him. If they say, oh, well, one moved up, one's injured, I've got nobody. Of course, we'll find about this person. And you'd have discussions about, you know, under 21s would want to bring somebody up from the under 20s. Okay, well, who should be it? You know, we had some interesting discussions around players that they knew really well and players that they didn't know so well, but I thought had more potential. But ultimately, again, they'd have to make the decision. You know, they'd say, well, I know this player, I've worked with him, I trust him, I want him to come in. Okay, well, what about this one? Because I think he's probably going to be the one.
And these are the reasons why.
Yeah, and these are the reasons why. And this is the kind of, you know, you try and bring some data, some analysis behind it. So you're saying, because often it'll be like, we had one national coach who'd always say, I don't want to select this player because he can't defend the far post. Okay, why do you think that? No, he can't. He just can't do it. So then you bring the stats and go, well, he's fine. He's actually fine. That was code for, I don't really want to pick him because he's a bit small. Yeah. And actually the game, he didn't have to defend it that far because the game's not really played that way. And when he did it fine, you know, and here are the figures to support that. So it gets rid of some of that noise of people saying.
Said maturation and size again.
Yeah.
And now Loughborough University, how you've gone from you're in the nationals, things are going well. Seems like some really great work in regards to what you're doing. It's happening at university, director of sport.
Yeah, director of football. I was maybe it's just me, and it's almost like going around full circle. So it's not the same as when I worked in Hackney because it's university, but I was involved in college programs and developing young people. So it's not that far removed from there. Loughborough's a great place. So Loughborough is the best sports university in the world in terms of sporting subjects. It has that kind of American sports university feel. You just feel like you're in a sports place. Everybody's involved in sport. The level is ridiculous in terms of, we've got athletes and swimmers going off to Olympic Games. We've got Adam Peaty swimming in the pool training. You've got you've got loads of people all there. So it's kind of a real inspirational kind of place. And we run. Football obviously is really popular on campus, men's, women's, futsal. We run a performance program all the way down to kind of recreational offer. And so again, going back to that variety, I like it because it means I can do lots of different things. And also impact, you're dealing with young people that are very talented. Some of them may go back and play football at a higher level. Probably most won't, but they'll come out with a really good degree. And if you look around the game of football, Loughborough graduates dominate in lots of different areas. So whether it's S&C, it's just amazing, how many people have gone through the programme that are kind of game changers, decision makers within the game. So it's quite exciting because the guys that you're working with and the girls that are going to be likely to be that kind of quality.
Yeah, the new or the next or the first.
Exactly. So I think the football's good. They play. We play Step 5. So United Counties League. We play in the FA Cup, the FA Vars.
Oh wow!
And we play high profile.
Is that
games.
new since you've been involved in it?
No. They've been playing it for a while. We've got a great stadium. 3,000 people can go in it. We just put a new pitch down. We've got the university's invested quite heavily. Premier League obviously use it for all their tournaments and festivals. Derby 23s play their games there. Liverpool are doing it as a halfway point for games. Doing the same with Chelsea. So Chelsea will come and use it as a halfway venue. Lots of really exciting things. Just employed a women's full-time head coach. So we're pushing the women's programme. We play in the National Futsal Series, second in the league at the moment, because we're really good at futsal. So it's great. It's a real variety, and also gives me lots of opportunities in terms of, getting back to my kind of roots about developing young people. I suppose one of the challenges for all universities, especially universities like that, is how you improve things like diversity, not only within the kind of staffing, but the players and stuff like that. So, one of the things I've been talking about is, even going back to where I was last night, my old club, how do we make sure we're in Hackney? People say, they can't, why are they going to come to Loughborough? Well, yeah, it is tough to get to Loughborough because you have to have probably 2 A's and a B. But kids in Hackney get 2 A's and a B. It's not. I think people assume that because they come from different areas, they're not going to have clever kids are clever kids, and they can play football and they can do other sports.
That's right.
How do we make it a destination? So, I guess again, from my background, it's not just sitting there going, well, diversity is a problem. All universities, Oxford, Cambridge, we're all a bit, Okay, well, I get that, but we can do some positive things to try and, and of course, I'm football, so I want good football players, and I know good football players come from all different communities. So, how do we make sure those people are coming into the university? But it's great, and I run the development group, the twos, second in the league at the moment. It's all about winning, and. Yeah, I like it. I like going out and doing a bit of coaching, taking the team on a Wednesday afternoon. I go with the first team on a Saturday, and we go semi-pro football. It takes me back. So it's some interesting places we go to.
And you're still involved?
No, because the facilities at Loughborough
state of
the art. And you'll probably find that some of the boys that are maybe coming out of academy football, when they come to Loughborough, they're actually upgrading in terms of the actual facilities. The gym's
absolutely
amazing. When I went to the gym the other day, it's amazing down there.
Listen, we I think all but one player in the performance group, was about 28 male players, have been at academies. Only one this year has come from a Cat 1, it was from Blackburn, but all the others have come from a variety. Some great from Nottingham Forest or whatever, some much lower. And the style of play, the quality of the pitches, the quality of the support services is probably higher than they've ever had before, and the coaching. So some of the stuff we're doing with the Premier League is really exciting around exit strategies. So they run 2 residential weekends at the moment, one for boys who are not getting scholarships.
Yeah.
And it's not the traditional, where you're going to come down, play a few games, scouts are going to watch, and it's more about how do you get supported through your GCSEs, because not only have you not got a scholarship, now you've got some exams, you don't want to flunk those as well and everything. So give some extra help on English and maths, some kind of plan B, I'm not saying you're going to come to Loughborough, but education might be the way forward, and there are some opportunities to come and do that. And actually, if you're thinking now at 15, 16, you're probably going to be in a better place to make, or have a wider choice of for your decision making when you get a bit older, rather than being narrow because you haven't got your maths GCSE and now you're struggling to get into university place.
Definitely, that's something that we always talk about, making sure that they broaden their thinking rather than thinking just football.
It gives them choice.
Dave Rainford's quite big on exit strategies and making sure players are looked after once they leave the game in the Premier League. Dave Rainford's really good at that.
Yeah, so I'm working really closely with David about how we do that. So we do that for the younger ones, and then we do kind of they call it like a prep camp. So it's June, boys that have been released at say 18, 19s, 20 maybe. Yeah, they still want to get back into the game. They still think that in July they can go pre-season. Well, can they do a little bit with us first? And again, that's football's kind of the hook. This is we're getting you ready, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Why don't you go here? Why, if you're going to go and nothing's going to happen for you, and you're going to end up at a semi-pro club earning 80 quid a week, you might want to think about coming here because, all right, you're not going to get your £80 a game or whatever it is, but you're going to get a good football experience. You're going to get wraparound support, so don't worry if you get injured, you'll get looked after. Your S&C will be good. You'll still be in the shop window because you're playing high-profile games. And by the way, you'll come out with a really good degree.
Definitely.
So
it's like a similar model to what you find in the States.
Yeah.
Which is really good, and I think something that we probably should do a lot more of.
Yeah. And I think the Premier League are definitely, and the Football League, they're all thinking now about that. I think they understand their responsibility to the game, that they've created some great places, but not everybody's going to get through it, so they do need some alternatives.
Cool. And I think what we normally do as we wrap up the show is, or the episode, is we like to ask a few questions, we'll call it the advice corner. So if you could give a certain group a piece of advice, what would it be? So if I could ask you, if you had a young up-and-coming academy manager, what advice would you give that individual?
I think you can always get better. So, just because you're in there and you're really, really busy, how do you keep on developing? How do you keep on educating yourself? And that can be formally, and I know that, through regulations you have to go through kind of qualification courses, etc. But going out and seeing other environments, not only here, not only football. So, it's great to go and find good people in football here and talk to. But, I know some really good people. One of the guys that I talk mostly to is in English Cricket Board. So Mo Bobbat, who's now their technical director. I'm not sure what his title is. A really good guy. You just talk about stuff. He's not, he likes football like everybody does, but he's from cricket. Or go, been very lucky through some of the stuff that we've done to go to Google and talk to the people at Google. So you're kind of broadening your horizons rather than just saying it's football, because we get into this kind of narrow thing. Or go to America, go and visit some other environments, go to Germany, but kind of you don't have to stay in football, go and have a look at different places. So kind of broaden your horizons, kind of broaden your knowledge, see how other people are doing things.
Yeah. If you had a scout, so a scout that is again young, up and coming, what advice would you give that's going scouting?
The education route again is key. So you need to go and make sure you're going on to the courses you need to get to, not just because you want a bit of paper, but because I think that again broadens your knowledge and your understanding. I think it's really good if you can find people that have done it, almost that kind of mentoring role, or the people that you can bounce ideas, so somebody who can stand by the side of the pitch and get a good understanding. It's really hard to get to some good people, sitting around the table listening to people talking about football. Say not always contributing, because you just sit there and kind of, but so being in that environment, how do you get to sit down with Chris Ramsey and just listen to him talking about player development, or John McDermott or Alex Inglethorpe, all the people that I've or whoever. And I know that's not possible for everybody, but how do you find it? Say when I was a young scout, when I was a young coach, I'll just travel everywhere just to be. Oh, so and so's doing this. I'll go. Yeah, I don't care. It's Leeds. I don't care. I'm going. It's Sunday in Ipswich. I'll go on the train. There's no train, so you go on the bus. I'll go. But you just go everywhere to kind of go to conferences, listen, read books, kind of just really upskill yourself. Try to become as knowledgeable as you can. Know about relative age effect, know about maturation, know and what that implications are. Think about all those different areas, kind of fundamentals, and just go and research it, as well as watching lots and lots of football.
Yeah, wow.
That's great.
Yeah, I know we're over the time, but wow. Really, really impressed to hear all the things you said. Colin?
I think it's, again, people in recruitment would like to hear, but not so. I think this one will be for parents, everyone, coaches, because there's lots from it. I just want to say thank you.
No, my pleasure.
For coming.
Big thank you, because I know, again,
Time.
distance, time.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Everything,
I've enjoyed it. It's always good to talk about this kind of stuff. So, no, thank you.
Cheers. No, thank you. Well done.
Cool.
Yeah, well done.
Good.
No, appreciate it. Really,
Which is church.
That's it. Sweat pouring in a little man.